Okay guys, so now it's time for phase 3. I'll assume that you've done your conditioning, you've done the intermittent phase of the training. Now it's time to move forward with your dog and escalate the level that you're asking from your dog in terms of the off-leash training and the e-collar training. Okay, remember, for me, the e-collar recalls are simultaneous to the introduction to the e-collar. That is how I personally introduced the e-collar to all the dogs that were obedience training, is with the recall. So we're about 2 weeks in now, give or take. Again, if you don't feel comfortable moving forward because you don't feel like your dog's proficient enough in phase 1 or phase 2, go back and work on it. You can never really spend too long conditioning or working in the intermittent phase as long as you're doing it properly. So now what we're going to be doing is I'm going to actually be taking the dog off leash, and I'm going to remain in the intermittent phase, but now I'm going to test the dog's obedience off the leash. Okay, and this is something that you have to do. So I'm here with Justice again, and remember, for Justice, sometimes she likes food, sometimes she doesn't. I'm not particularly concerned because, again, for me, my training doesn't hinge on the dog wanting to eat or not. Come here. One other little quick thing. If you take your dog somewhere and you're going to let your dog off the leash, my strong suggestion is that you do a few recalls on the line, just like you were doing in phase 2 of the training, where you do a couple of long line recalls with the dog and make sure that the dog is going to be in the right mindset. So, just like with the loose leash walking, okay, the first thing I do when I take the leash off is I watch the behavior of the dog. If the dog just takes off, right away, I'm going to do a recall with the conditioning, okay? And that means that I'm going to start tapping the e-collar on a level that is slightly uncomfortable, okay? And making the dog come back to me. I will escalate that level as necessary when the dog's on the leash. So, the big mistake a lot of people make in this place is that, okay, let's say your dog's slightly uncomfortable level, in your opinion, is an 8, okay? And you're working your dog on an 8. Your dog takes off. You start tapping the 8 and the dog shows no physical response. But it's an 8. It's always been an 8. Doesn't matter. Okay? Your dog is telling you, this does not affect me right now. Whatever I'm doing is more important than that 8. Okay? So that's where you have to escalate. And, oh, what number has? It's not about the number. If you're playing numbers game, your dog's going to be gone. Don't play numbers games. Go up quickly and incrementally until you see a physical response from the dog, and then call the dog. The dog must be obedient to the sensation of the e-collar. If the dog isn't, you're going to have a problem. Justice, come here. Good girl. So I'm going to take her off, and you guys are going to see. We're going to watch her behavior. What's her default? She's on 8 right now, by the way. Her default is not to just take off. She's kind of smelling around. No problem. I'm going to make a recall with the conditioning. So on the dog. Justice! Ah, it's a good girl! Good. Some interest in the food, she just spit it out. So now, from now on, there won't be any chip for her when she gets to me. It's just going to be praise and a pet. All right? So, we're going to walk, and I'm going to let the dog do this again. I'm going to tap her with the e-collar. Justice, that's a good girl! Wow! If she does that, electric right away. Hey, electric right away. Electric, electric. Yes, good girl. So what did she do there? She did what a lot of dogs do. She came towards me and then blew on right by me. I need the dog to pause here. I don't need the dog to sit or to down. A lot of people really think about that. It's not that important. If the dog goes by me, I'm just going to step away and start tapping again, and making sure that the dog is going to experience that discomfort all throughout the act of moving on past me and running around there. And I'm going to show her the e-collar turns off when you're here, okay? The second I see her move towards me, of course, I will turn the e-collar off. I don't wait till she's physically at me. So right here, I'm going to turn the e-collar again. Justice! Good girl! There we go. And you can see again, initially she ignored. So I'm on 8. I'm going to go up now to 14 because this dog's telling me 8 is really just not a thing for me today. No problem. This is where being flexible on the e-collar, not really micromanaging your numbers, is important, because the dog is already conditioned. She knows better, okay? So I have not yet seen recalls that make me confident enough to leave conditioning, where I'm starting the recall with the electric. I want to see a better response from the dog when she feels. Good girl, that's it right there. Wow. And you'll notice I did not even give the recall. That time she responded correctly to the sensation of the e-collar. If your dog isn't even responding correctly to the sensation of the e-collar, it's not really important if you're telling the dog to come or not. The most important thing is that when the dog feels it, she shows the desired response. So we're gonna walk now, and you guys can watch Justice, and she's gonna go off and do her own thing, and I'm going to call her every once in a while. Now, because the last repetition was good, I'm gonna call her without the stim this time. Wait till she goes. Justice, come. Good job, baby girl. Yes, good. We're gonna go back this way. And again, I try to do this in a moderately stimulating environment. Again, nothing crazy. Just wanting the dog to kind of experience being off the leash and showing me the desired behavior. Again, I escalated the level of my e-collar because the dog told me where I wasn't high enough, and that's important. If there's no escalation, there's no obedience. I'm going to do another one without the conditioning. I'm just going to give her a chance to come, and I'll only correct her if she doesn't come. Now, this is important, okay? Justice, come. Good girl. This is important. There was an escalation. So, in this phase of the training, I'm changing one thing, okay? Before on the line, remember the intermittent phase 1, intermittent training. On the recall, what did I do? I would call the dog sometimes with the stim preceding the recall, and sometimes only with the stim if the dog didn't come. But the level was on a minor grade of discomfort. Now what I did is the second I said I'm not going to call the dog with stim preceding the recall, I turned my stimulation up. Now I want it to not just be a minor discomfort, I want it to be a moderate to major discomfort, okay? Again, I don't need an huge overreaction from the dog, but for instance, I was at 14, I went to 20. I want it to be a little bit of a sharp correction now if she chooses not to come, which she did, and I gave her 20 on the e-collar. You saw a quick jerk from the dog, and then she immediately moved back towards me. Now I'm going to move back down to moderate discomfort, which for her today is 14. Proceeding, okay? So remember, conditioning, I precede the recall with the stimulation, all right? And then when I'm testing the obedience of the dog, I call the dog without the stimulation and give the dog a chance to come without the stimulation. Justice, that's a good girl. Very good response to the e-collar there. So now I'm going to go up to 20 on the e-collar, break, and I'm going to let the dog roll around. Now look, you don't have to follow my ratio exactly. My suggestion is judge the level at which your dog is proficient in the sensation of the e-collar. If your dog has a very good response to the sensation of the e-collar, you're in a good place. If your dog is still struggling, like your dog feels the e-collar and is not immediately turning towards you before you can even say the command, you probably need to spend a little more time in the intermittent phase, leaning more towards conditioning, okay? And put the dog back on a line, needless to say. So, here's the dog. Now I'm going to call her once she kind of gets going. She sees some people up ahead. Justice, come. Good girl, Justice. Yes. Good. And that was excellent. No need for a stimulation there. The dog was very responsive. Okay? So this is where I'm going to stay now for a little bit. And I'm going to really start working on my 360-degree control of the dog. Remember what I said earlier. If you can't control the dog far from you, you most certainly can't control the dog close to you. My first creation of control off leash with the dog is at a distance. I want to be able to call my dog from anywhere, get my dog close to me from anywhere in an escalating level of distraction. So obviously we were in a lower stimulation environment. Now I'm going to push the dog into a little bit of a higher stimulation environment by just having some people and some other dogs around. And I'm just going to call the dog. You see some people, and again, when she kind of gets going there, I'm going to call her. Justice, come. That's a good girl. And you could see there, she got the correction, right? Because she didn't come right away. Don't wait. Don't repeat the command, okay? I gave her a chance. She chose not to come right away. Boop, buzzed her on the e-collar. So off we go again. So there's somebody up ahead. We're going to watch the behavior of the dog. I'm going to let her start getting close, and then I'm going to call her. Justice, come. Good girl. Yes. Good job. And there's the, now I let her go back, and she's with the person. So now I'm going to call her again off the individual. All right. I'm going to lead off with the stim this time. Justice. Good girl. Very nice. Good job. And the dog is demonstrating to me a complete understanding of the e-collar. Justice, come. 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 Good. Come. Justice. Good. And that, what just happened there, guys, there was like 4 people in close proximity to the dog, right? I called her. She chose not to come. Right away I started stimulating, and then she started casting around, going this way, that way, every which way except towards me. The only time I would turn off the e-collar was when the dog started to move towards me. The second she changed directions to go in another direction, I would repeat the command, but I repeat the command with the pressure, okay? The pressure is on until the dog is doing the right thing, which is obviously moving towards me. I'm creating 360 degrees of control around me. I don't care what's going on. I don't care if there's 4 people, if there's 10 people, if there's 5 dogs. You need to come to me when you're called in every situation, right? And that's when you have that off-leash heeling, off-leash sit and down, and all these types of things become very easy, right? And the dog becomes much more reliable. You see how she's automatically checking in with me. I have not asked her to do anything other than come occasionally. I put pressure on that come, so she knows that it's an obligatory thing. And now look at the behavior of the dog. She's practically with me. Now, would I trust her on a city street quite yet? No, but this is the beginning, okay? This is where we're now in phase 2 of the intermittent training. So the next recall again, I'll lead off with the electric. Justice, good girl, good job. All right, so I led off with the electric. So you can see in this phase of training, I'm switching back and forth between leading off with the electric, where I start the stimulation before the recall, and then calling the dog, giving the dog a chance to come, and if she does not come, correcting her. And I said correcting her with the e-collar, and that involves a escalation where I notice the dog go to a little bit of, well, not a little bit, I want to see a little bit more than just a tiny bit of discomfort. I want to see a bit more of a moderate discomfort, because I want it to be slightly aversive that she chose not to come. That's really important. So the next phase of training will be to escalate the distractions on the dog and to fade out the conditioning completely. And that means I'm only going to call the dog and give the dog a chance to come and correct her if she doesn't come. If I notice that she's failing regularly, I will take a step back and I will go back to conditioning and work on that a little bit. That's good.